Hello, I'm Susan Schoenfeld, a senior legal editor at BLR's Human Resources and Employment Law Publications, and I'm here today to talk about political speech in the workplace. As we approach Election Day, the media is of course full of stories about political conflict and differing opinions on things such as the economy, the size of the federal government, and its involvement in business and the private lives of American citizens. Most often the discussion falls onto who is the appropriate person to elect to deal with these situations. So it's only natural that these discussions overflow into the workplace. And reasoned political discussions can often blossom into disputes, and strong emotions can interfere with positive working relationships. So employers are forced to address the issue of political speech head on. Now, in order to address the issue of political speech in the workplace, employers should consider a few key concepts, the first of which is free speech. Most people know that the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution grants the right to free speech, including political speech. Now, what they don't know is that the First Amendment generally applies only to state action, that is to say, action taken by federal, state, or local governments. These protections do not apply generally in the private workplace. And therefore the right to exercise political speech in the workplace can be limited without violating the First Amendment. I should mention here that some state laws do protect an employee's right to engage in political activities outside of the workplace. But what we're talking about here today is internal political activity within the workplace. Employers can use policies and handbooks to regulate such political speech. First, let's talk about non-solicitation policies. Generally, there are two types of solicitation. There's union solicitation and all other types of solicitation, including political solicitation and charitable solicitation. Now, solicitation can be a request for money, which is what we usually think of, but it may also include things such as handing out informational pamphlets or putting up posters espousing a certain political or personal belief. Now, employers may prohibit employees or others from solicitation outside of the union context. Prohibitions are usually included in an employee handbook or posted rules. And of course, rules against solicitation must be uniformly enforced. Let's talk a little bit about union solicitation, a different case. The National Labor Relations Act, or NLRA, does not regulate political activity per se, but it does give employees the right to participate in concerted activity, including speech, in organizing what the NLRA calls employees' mutual aid and protection. So, for example, the NLRA empowers employees to wear union-related shirts and buttons and to distribute written materials regarding unions and the like, so long as no solicitation occurs during working hours. Now, because the NLRA protects union-related activities, but not political speech, employers must take great care to distinguish between the two when they're establishing a non-solicitation policy. So when making that policy, consider the following issues. If you have a non-solicitation policy that is neutrally enforced, you can refuse to let employees distribute or post political flyers at work, as I said before. But you may want to remind employees of your policy in the weeks leading up to the election day, as this type of activity tends to escalate around elections. Now, if an employer prohibits wearing political buttons or insignia or posting political posters, the company should be certain that the prohibition is followed absolutely. That is to say, for all people in all circumstances. Remember that, in addition to a non-solicitation policy, employers can also ban political slogan buttons or t-shirts as part of a dress code policy. This is particularly useful for employees who come into contact with clients or customers, either inside or outside of the workplace. If anyone, including the company president, wears a political election button or t-shirt or other insignia, the ban will lose its force, and an employee who is disciplined for violating the policy may have a claim for wrongful discharge or discipline, or even sometimes coercion under state law. Remember, any embargo on buttons may not extend, buttons or clothing, etc., may not extend to union insignia worn during a union organization or election, as this, as I mentioned before, is protected under the NLRA. Let's talk a little bit about harassment in political speech. When an employer is addressing the issue of political discussions in the workplace, it should remind employees of the company's policy prohibiting harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, as well as the company's complaint procedures for reporting such behavior. Make sure that employees understand that even conversations related to politics must comply with these policies. Discussing politics is not an excuse to harass, intimidate, or bully another employee. In addition, employers should promptly investigate any complaint of political harassment or bullying in the workplace in accordance with company policies and procedures, and the employer should ensure that any discipline is imposed, again, uniformly. As I mentioned earlier, many states do not allow employers to discipline or discriminate against employees because of what they do outside of work. Among other things, state laws protect employees' political activities such as running for office or fundraising. And again, this means activity that occurs outside of the workplace. Employers should keep in mind that if they want to constrain employee behavior regarding politics, it's the behavior to be regulated and not the beliefs or the outside involvement that is to be limited. Just one final word on employer endorsement of specific political candidates or platforms. If an employer endorses a particular candidate, a party, or platform, it runs the risk of alienating employees and customers, so it may not be the most expedient course. The practice followed by most companies is to avoid political comment other than a statement to employees encouraging them to be socially responsible and vote. I hope that this information has been helpful to you today, and I also encourage you to go out on Election Day and vote. Thank you.